Redwood carpets the South Coast Range. A crane lifts on the warm air from the cool river canyon. Your father sits cross-legged, the campfire coloring his darkness. His arm, level with the ground, glides across the horizon. The land is ancient and precious, everything dying. Now is the time to light the candle and incense. Place the objects on the altar. Hear the crane and remember the healer in the stone house who taught you how to bring the earth when you fly. The land on which we gathered today is the unceded territory of the Awaswas-speaking Upi tribe. Today, the Amamutsun Land Trust is restoring traditional stewardship to ensure ancestors of both the Awaswas and Mutsun-speaking people are honored and never forgotten.
For our time of meditation, I'd like to start with a centering breath, actually with a wiggle. Just kind of shake out whatever it is you're holding in your body that, oof, a couple of breaths like that, oof, just let it out. And then a deeper breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And if you can, feel your feet on the floor beneath you. Feel yourself held by the chair that you're sitting in. You each have hopefully received a colorful piece of paper with some quotes on it, and you may have actually already glanced at them. These quotes represent two overarching themes. So in a little while, we're going to hear some music, and as the music plays, I invite you to just scan. You don't have to read each and every one, just scan them, and see if you can get a sense of what those two themes might be. And if one or two of those quotes jump out at you as something that, feels like a truth, something that resonates for you, or something that raises a question, or something that you really don't agree with, just keep that in mind. After the music, we'll have a few brief moments if someone feels the desire to share that experience. But we'll start with the music and attentiveness to those words. One of the questions I had is, what is the impact of these words and how they were received collectively? We've already heard a few things, that love and grief are actually connected. Another theme is that they are universal. It's something that absolutely everyone can relate to in our unique way. We each can relate to it. There's also something about expressing all of that, finding a way to express, whether it's love or grief or the vast number of possibilities between them. We need to give expression to our inner truths. There's also something about how these experiences can inspire either fear or motivation. We can be afraid to give expression to these truths because it might make us feel vulnerable. We might fear that we're the only ones experiencing this. Or we can allow those emotions to motivate us towards some kind of action that we bring our hearts to. And all of this, encasing and embracing all of this, is mystery. Because who's got this figured out? Not anyone I know of. But this is part of what it means to be human. So let's embrace again the silence and be embraced by it for another moment in appreciation of the breadth and the depth and the complexity of human experience, the poignancy, the diversity, the fragility, and the strengths within us and among us. Taking a deep breath. And being present. When you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. I want to begin with a little story that always makes me smile. It's a story of a toddler introduced for the very first time to their brand new baby sibling. The parents stood by anxiously, expectantly watching to see if all of their efforts to get their eldest child used to this new family member would actually have taken hold. The child approached and was a little hesitant and a little shy. A few minutes of staring into the baby's eyes, the toddler leaned in close, looked from both sides, and then whispered something into the baby's ears. And the parents strained to listen, to hear what the child was saying, and what they heard was this: "Tell me where you just came from." And what are we doing here? Because I'm forgetting. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's a sweet scene, and it's easy to imagine and to laugh at, but I will hazard to say that there is some part of us that can relate to this, that knows what that toddler meant by that question. We sense that there is a reason, there is a purpose, that there is some place that we came from, something that we have forgotten, and that it's really important to try to figure out what that is. All we know for sure is that time passes very quickly, that life piles on and things get noisy and complicated at a dizzying pace. Somewhere along the line, given all the other things we are expected to keep track of if we are going to survive and hopefully thrive, it's all easy to forget who we are and what our lives are for. We take in so much other information along the way. We forget that life is not just meant to be about that information. It's not just meant to be about a tug of war between imposed do's and don'ts, between all those external events and norms and expectations. Life, we sense on a certain level, is and needs to be more than that. And we each need to bring more to it. And the question is, who, me? What can I bring? Who am I? The Hebrew sages affirm the influence of all those complicated external pressures, but they draw attention instead to the choices that we have in response to all of that. Do our acts arise from a will to increase the good among us, or are they guided by automatic, emotional, reactive drives? Are we too overwhelmed, too distracted, too fearful, too rageful, too grieving to choose well? Quite possibly. I know that I have not been at my best lately and have not always made the best choices. The challenge is to pay attention to that, to notice it, to remember, to try to remember what life is for, and to practice channeling our confusion, if that's what it is, or our fear, or our rage, or our grief, toward that which is life-giving. Love, for example, compassion and care, for example. The challenge is not to ignore or negate, but to move the painful complexities of our lives into the direction of good, transforming them so that they become a vital wellspring. It's hard to think about rage and grief as a wellspring. That's the challenge. And that's what I want to talk about today, the fact that we are here, however it is that we got here, and things are getting increasingly noisy and complicated. And it's easy to forget who we are because other people are trying to tell us who we are or should be. It's easy to forget what strengths we brought into this world, what strengths are still inside us. So this is about remembering, not remembering in the nostalgic good old days kind of way. I mean remembering, piecing together something of truth, something about who we are as unique individuals who are still growing into life. It doesn't matter how old we are still growing into life. Remembering our way into the mysteries, perhaps that preceded our birth, that question, why are we here? And again, I'm not talking about, the how and the why of conception, or if there's a master plan, a predetermined destiny for each of us. This is about paying attention to the trajectory of things. If we don't help each other get clear about our purpose, about who we need to be individually and collectively amidst all the possibilities, I believe that we each do have something unique and meaningful, something essential to contribute, and it is up to us to try, as long as we are breathing, to remember it. And if we can't, to try to remind each other of it, to claim it, and to channel it in ways that will be useful, that will make of it a wellspring, that will be useful to life itself, increasing the good. So today's topic did not come from a book or a mountaintop or a mystical dream. It came from an existential crisis, my own. Someone I love dearly needs a lot of support right now, so I have taken on the role of caregiver willingly, because that's one of the ways that love expresses itself. What I didn't realize was how consuming that shift would become. Temporally, physically, emotionally, how differently my days would unfold. I am grateful for the sacred privilege of this time together, and there is grief. I'd lie if I said there wasn't. Grief as I bear witness to the decline of a loved one. Grief as I realize that I have begun to feel a bit disconnected from parts of myself, those parts of myself that are not a caregiver, those parts of myself that want some control over my schedule, balancing predictability and spontaneity, being creative or social or exploratory. Also, that part of myself that feels the urgency of the times in which we live. There's so much going on out there. There is a call to protest. There is a call to have our voices be heard. There is a call to prevent or to heal the damage being done. But I'm a little distracted these days by the home front. Don't have the time or energy for much of that. I spent decades building a life, a routine that has now radically changed. And it hasn't been easy to adjust to the new normal. And I realize that this very personal situation is not at all unusual for people my age. But the thing is, all of the struggle with this has been compounded by the political issues, by the social issues, the environmental violences of the last couple of years, the last 10 months, the last days, and it is overwhelming. So much has been changing so quickly. Things are so noisy. And I find myself holding so much confusion, so many questions, so much rage and grief and fear, and I find myself acting and making choices from that place of constriction, not from a place of wisdom and clarity. In desperation, I recently whispered into the ears of my newest grandbaby, born in May. I whispered into her ear that question, why are we here? Where did you just come from? Why are we here? She gave me one of those looks that, and then there was a gurgle and a coo, a little bit of drool, a gurgle and a coo. And I have to say there was much wisdom in that. But it also leaves me wanting more details. The questions that I bring into my meditations and into my prayers and pretty much into every adult conversation I'm having these days is, who do you think I am? Not who I was, but like at core, not related to my doings or my reputation or any of that, just like who I am, my essence. Who do you think I am today? And who do you think we are? Who are we? What is mine to give? What is yours to give? What is ours to give, to contribute, to express? What is our purpose now, given the increasingly complicated realities of our lives? And I know I'm not the only one asking that question, and it's actually a timeless question. Many religious sources say in response that we are here, our purpose is to glorify and praise God. That can raise some troubling questions. In the book of Leviticus, we read that our purpose is to be holy, which can also take a lot of effort to unpack. I mean, what does that even mean? The tension between what pulls us down, what constricts us, and what lifts us up, what frees us. The tension between our natural inclinations, which may or may not be helpful in the long run, and those that we are urged to cultivate on behalf of something better, which maybe is a bit of what holiness is about. That tension does not feel great. It does not make things any easier, but it's not bad, I tell myself. That tension is not bad. It comes with being born. It comes with being alive, with being human. It's just the way that it is. In Jewish tradition, the tensions that come with being human, both the complexities and the conflicts outside in the world and those that are inside us, in terms of our inclinations, our responsibilities, our choices, they are meant to be in constant dialogue. The inner realities, the external realities are meant to be in constant dialogue, and ultimately they are meant to shape our identity, to answer that question, who are you? Especially in times of transition or loss, or during times of fear or grief, like now. According to these teachings, our purpose is to face and channel the complex reality of all of these conflicts and struggles, external and internal, for the sake of what they call holiness. Aside from not necessarily knowing what that word means, it's impossible to do when we ignore or minimize aspects of our reality. When we decorate it with words like, I'm too busy to deal with that. Or, it's all for the best, it'll turn out fine, don't worry. Or that couldn't possibly happen here. It is super hard to do when we don't take the time to consider why we are here and what holiness might have to do with it. What is easily forgotten is how important it is to be present to what's going on out there and in here, and the impact that all of that is having, what that says about who we are becoming. So it behooves us to pay attention and to remember to ask the right questions for the right reasons, whether for the sake of holiness or, let's just call it love, or maybe even just survival. Maybe for the sake of compassion, for the sake of creation and connection, for the sake of goodness and awe and justice and cooing and gurgling joy, possibility. Maybe even for the sake of our own ability to feel inspired every now and then to lift our voices in praise in whatever way we feel inclined, to extend our hands in celebration of the fact that we are here in these times, for whatever reason. The fact is, these are not easy days to be here, to be alive on this planet, to be a human being. Despite all our technological and ideological advances and life-giving potentialities, confusion is rampant. Grief and fear and rage are among us and within us because so many of those advances are being shredded so rapidly. So many of us are grieving climate crisis, every week reshaping landscapes, the rise of violence, the erosion of trust, the sufferings in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Chicago, the ICE raids, the loss of democracy, the shootings. Innocent people everywhere are caught in conflicts not of their own choosing. And here's the thing, at the very same time as all of that, less obvious things, more personal things are reshaping the landscapes of our lives in quiet ways. Children grown and gone, or glued to screens. Bodies that can no longer do what they once could. Relationships lost to cognitive decline, faded friendships, isolation, loneliness, regrets, dreams we didn't get to follow. And through it all, somehow we keep showing up. In the middle of my most recent existential crisis, having to do not only with my caregiver role, but also my own health issues, I was reminded of the words of Joanna Macy, the Buddhist scholar and activist under whom I studied many years ago. Many of her words are on that piece of paper you received. She died July 19th of this year. May her memory be a blessing. I remember her saying that hearts that break open can contain the whole universe, and that our pain for the world is the other face of our love for the world. Now, I was raised to believe that brokenness is bad, that it is a weakness, and that pain is just a reward for it. But Joanna Macy offered another option in the face of all that brokenness, one that is life-giving. She affirmed that brokenness and grief feel bad, yes, and they can actually be useful. And I know that sounds simplistic and possibly a bit callous, but she taught that broken hearts remind us that we are still alive, that we can still feel things. They remind us who we are at core, which is living, breathing beings who are connected to life, who are connected to one another, who are still capable of love. It's a tricky perspective because you never want to imply to someone who is actively grieving that grief is a good thing. But it's not a stretch to recognize that we grieve, that we rage, that we respond to the brokenness, to the wounds of the world with tears and outrage precisely because we love. Love is patient, love is kind, yes, and love is painful. Because it is vulnerable as much as it is strong. Facing that pain with patience and kindness, claiming who and what it is we grieve because we love, is a key to who we are and why we are here. It can guide us to more meaningful choices, to acts of courageous compassion and generosity, and can help us heal ourselves and one another as we relearn to trust and to allow and to express grief and love in creative, new, rebellious, new, revolutionary, new ways, relevant to the time in which we live. This is what is called the alchemy of the soul, the ability to transform suffering into empathy, to transform confusion into wisdom and inertia into love made purposeful, love expressed, not just held inside, but given expression. It's what the mystics call raising the sparks, finding fragments of beauty, fragments of meaning and truth, what they call holiness in even the hardest parts of life, and lifting them up as only we can, each one of us as individuals. So this ache that I have been feeling the last few years and the last few weeks and the last several days regarding everything that has changed in my home, in my own body, in my routines, in my country. Well, it's not what I would have wanted, it's not what I envisioned, but it is what it is. And I can either deny it, or sugarcoat it, or rail against it from afar, or consider it a trailhead to who I am, to my life's purpose, to a deeper love than I have yet been able to open up to. A fierce love, a love that knows what is worth grieving and what is worth protecting. I'm certainly willing to consider that. I have not pierced the mysteries of our origins. I don't remember much before the age of 4 or 5, and I often question why I couldn't have been born at a time or in a place with more useful skills or insights. But I have come to believe that we each do come into this complex world with something that allows us to contribute uniquely to the good at every stage of life. a perspective, a sensitivity, a way of seeing, of helping, of healing, of building, comforting, or creating, modeling joy. We each have something that no one else has in quite the same way, but we forget. We forget that about ourselves and can all too easily come to doubt that about each other. What I want you to take from all this, and I realize we are running somewhat over, I appreciate your attention. What I want you to take from all of this is that none of us have to be extraordinary. None of us have to have all the answers. Not all of us have to have a platform or a degree or a 10-year plan or a body capable of standing for hours on end at a protest march. There are lots of ways to make a difference. We just have to be willing to pay attention to what's going on and to who we are and be present to all of it, to stay in dialogue with the grief, with the wounds, the broken places, the discordances, the questions, the ambiguities, because if we let them, they can lead us to the part of ourselves that is, I'm going to call it holy, or maybe whole. The part of ourselves that still wants to bring something beautiful into the world, even now, especially now when the pull toward despair is growing. The unique gift that we each have within us to give might not be easy to identify, given all the complexities of our lives, all the changings and shifting responsibilities that tug at us. And it may not look the way it used to. It might not be a career or a calling. It might be, I tell myself, how gently I speak to the people I care for. It might be how we greet strangers, or how much love we put into the meals we make, or the art that we create when no one is looking. It might be waiting for us in the most hidden parts of our life story, in the recesses of the fierce, tired, broken, vulnerable, still beating heart. I can't claim to remember where I came from or why, although my parents insist that I was planned. But I also can't imagine, if there is a reason behind all of this life thing, that any of us were tasked with changing the whole world all by ourselves. Or that we're allowed to just sit back and watch it devolve. What I feel like I need to remember is that our purpose is to allow confusion and grief and rage to guide us to something greater. Guide us to love and to goodness and to joy. To allow love to guide us through our small corner of the world, starting right here, for example. And another thing to remember is that there is always cause to gurgle and coo. There is always cause for joy. Thank you.